Things are really starting to heat up on the Juan Soto front, and especially for the Toronto Blue Jays, as they've met with him and things went well, according to multiple analysts. So we'll break that down on this episode of Jays Digest, as well as just the overall landscape of the Soto sweepstakes. We'll have that and much more coming up next. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And things are really starting to heat up here. We're falling into that same trap that we did last offseason with the Shohei Ohtani stuff, but it feels, I'm not going to say it feels a little bit different this time around, but the Blue Jays are getting their work done early. And shout out to you guys for all the support that we've received on recent videos. It's truly been incredible. And I want to let you know that a large percentage of you still watching these are not subscribed to the channel. So go ahead and hit that sub button. It'd mean the world to Nick and I because we're very close to our goal of 15,000 subscribers. And pretty sure that we could get there by the end of this Soto mania that has been going around. Whether it wraps up in a couple of weeks or whether it wraps up in a couple of months, we'll have you covered every step of the way. But Nick, this thing it doesn't really have a shortage of drama, and we expected that as soon as the offseason rolled around here, and the Blue Jays are right in the mix. Again, that's all you could ask for of them at this point. They had a disappointing regular season, and they have to make some changes in the offseason. Simply enough, that whether it's Juan Soto, whether it's another big name free agent, but a lot of reports are indicating that the Jays are going to be active on the market and that they're all in on Juan Soto. Maybe a little bit more than people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, Jeff Passan came out and revealed some very interesting details, not only about Juan Soto, but how the Jays plan and will be getting, quote, a guy this offseason. So let's just dive into it. You can see here, in the podcast, and he said, the Blue Jays deserve to be in this conversation about teams to intrigue him this offseason because they're going to get a guy this winter. I don't know if it will be Juan Soto. It certainly could, and don't discount them. And again, it certainly could be Juan Soto, is from Jeff Passan. Holds a bit more weight than guys like Bob Nightingale and John Heyman, which we'll get into in a minute. And he emphatically said that the Jays will get a guy this offseason, and that when talking about Soto and how it would be another dagger if Jays don't get him, he said it could be the best or worst offseason for Jays fans. There's a chance to be the best winner for Blues fans or the absolute worst. Now, I think by absolute worst, I'll get into the clarification in a minute. He didn't mean that they're going to get nobody because he believes they're going to get a guy. He just means in the sense of back-to-back off seasons with a heartbreak if they don't land Juan Soto. But a lot of buzz, Peter, around the Soto to Jays thing, and we'll have a Heyman report that literally dropped 15 minutes ago, and we'll show you in a minute here about how their meeting went a couple days ago. Things are starting to trend in an interesting direction. I don't want to say the right direction because I don't want to get my hopes up yet, but a positive direction for sure.
I just don't think it'll sting as badly because the Blue Jays waited and waited and waited for Shohei to make his decision. They didn't have a plan B. Now, what Jeff Passan is saying here is that there is a plan B, probably even a plan C or even a plan D at that point. Like it's a deeper free agent class. It may not be as spectacular with Shohei at the top of it, but let's not let's give Juan Soto the credit he deserves as a player as well. He's an MVP candidate. He's a guy that has been one of the best hitters in the league ever since he got into the majors. So he's no slouch compared to Shohei Ohtani when we're just comparing offense to offense here. So that's a great guy to headline the list. But then you look down and there's Alex Bregman in there. There's multiple trade candidates that could be out there as well. So the Blue Jays will have an opportunity. Willie Adames is in there. Corbin Burns. You got Max Fried, who we had a report on just a couple of days ago, and then obviously Pete Alonso too, which is another name to monitor if you're the Blue Jays front office. But there's a lot of different ways that they can pivot here. So I think that'll make it more digestible if they ultimately don't get Juan Soto. And I've been on record saying I think the Mets are going to go out and get him. I think they should be the favorite, or the Yankees and Mets should be the co-favorites in that regard. And I think the Blue Jays are okay being in the background here because going toe-to-toe with Steve Cohen and the Steinbrenner family, I don't know if that's necessarily in the Blue Jays' best interest. They're going to make a competitive offer. We know that, and they want to get him. But will they be able to outlast those other two teams? I'm not so sure about that. But the fact that they're doing this work early, the fact that they've already met with him and they're going to have a series of meetings with Juan Soto, that holds a lot of weight now. And you're going to be able to pivot if he makes his decision soon. And if he doesn't make his decision soon, well, you had your talks with him. You know where he's at in terms of his interest level to your ball club. So you can gauge that and kind of make the other subsequent moves that you would have made anyways. and maybe that'll convince him to ultimately sign on the dotted line with you.
Yeah, and again, here's the new report that just dropped at around 11 Eastern from John Heyman. Here, at least the Jays and Red Sox owners made impressive in-person presentations to Juan Soto, but multiple team owners are yet to present and will do so in the coming days. So we assume the other teams are at least the Yankees and Mets and maybe the Dodgers, I guess, depending on how things go. But the Jays and Red Sox got out of the way first, and it seems like they've made some impressive in-person presentations. So this is encouraging, but again, like we saw, Ohtani was very impressed with the Blue Jays last season, offseason, didn't really work out. Do you hold much weight into this? I mean,
Yeah.
it is a good sign that they, again, had an impressive in-person meeting, but so did the Boston Red Sox, and there's some, I guess, some rumors going around that, the Red Sox are gaining traction in the sweepstakes. I think ultimately it's going to come down to, a few different teams, but it's a good sign, at least, I guess, that they made an impressive in-person presentation. It's a good sign that they got the in-person presentation. That's already
Yeah.
farther than I thought they would have been when the season ended a couple months ago.
Well, you had to imagine that Juan Soto was gonna meet with as many teams
Yeah.
as possible, especially 5 minutes after losing the World Series. This guy's already saying that he's gonna evaluate all of his options and meet with as many teams, and everybody has the same chance. It's probably not true. That's more so of a leverage play, I would say, from Scott Boras and Soto. But yeah, it is a good sign, I guess. But it doesn't mean anything until he actually signs and until we see him wearing a Blue Jays cap at media availability. So I don't know if we'll get there. I don't know if that's a realistic possibility, but like we said, Nick, they're doing their work early and they're giving themselves a chance to be able to pivot elsewhere, which I ultimately think they're gonna have to do. But it doesn't really matter because no one of substance has signed yet. Like we've seen Kyle Hendricks sign. We've seen,
Or no.
yeah, Travis d'Arnaud. Like a couple of moves have been made here, but nothing really groundbreaking. So the Jays have time, and the fact that they aren't delaying this into December like they did with Shohei Ohtani, and then they have to backtrack and sign a 39-year-old Justin Turner and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa to double his market value. I think that is good, and the Blue Jays learned from their mistakes from last year. Their mistakes from last offseason cost them a chance at the postseason. The Detroit Tigers, who won not even 88 games, made it all the way to the ALDS. Like they snuck into the playoffs despite being sellers at the deadline. So it was a significantly weak American League, and the Blue Jays had a chance if they were able to stay healthy and make the moves that they needed to make in the offseason to go on an extended run. I wasn't impressed with the Yankees last year, but they got to the World Series because the AL was weak, and the Blue Jays missed out on a valuable opportunity, and I don't think they're going to do that same mistake this time around. So if they don't get Soto, if they get Soto, I don't think it'll change their approach. They're still going to have an impactful offseason, and they managed to sort of replenish their farm system at the trade deadline last year. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise, you could say.
Yeah, they have a chance this year to really go for it, and they're getting their meetings out of the way early because we know that they met last season towards December. So let us know what your thoughts are on that. And quickly, Peter, before we wrap up, we do have some interesting notes surrounding David Bell. So David Bell, the former, I guess, Reds manager, was hired by the Toronto Blue Jays. Do you have any thoughts on this hiring? It's a very interesting one. Obviously, he's very well regarded around the MLB, and now he's going to be in the Blue Jays front office, which is something that is very exciting if you're a Jays fan.
Yeah, I mean it's a cool move. Obviously, very well seasoned around Major League Baseball. I'm just wondering where this leaves James Click now. Like, where does James Click fall into the fold? We heard some maybe rumblings about him becoming the next general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't know how legit those are now that Mark Shapiro said that Ross Atkins is here to stay, and he's here to stay as well. So, I mean, it doesn't change much on the on-field product that we're seeing if you don't make the subsequent moves to your roster. You have to make those moves that we've been talking about. There's a hole at third base, there's a hole in the outfield. You don't have a backup catcher, a reliable backup catcher as of now. So the bullpen too needs some work. There's a lot of things that need to be done with the Toronto Blue Jays. It's a long laundry list of things that they need to accomplish this offseason. And I don't know if they need more personnel in the front office. That's definitely not my main concern with this team. So, sure, it's fine. Maybe he changes a little bit of the culture in there. Maybe he has his fingerprints on some more moves that maybe he wouldn't have had he not been there. So I don't know. It's too early to say what kind of impact this will have, but the work needs to be done on the field for the Blue Jays. That's the simplest way I can put this. You need to get your guys this offseason, whether it's Soto, whether it's anybody else, because the on-field product that we saw last year was just not good enough. And not only was it not good enough, Nick, it was very boring to watch. It was a very dull product. The Jays got more fun after the trade deadline, which is saying something. The team was not properly constructed, and that is my biggest worry heading into the season. So I don't know how this offseason is going to shake out, but it's gotta start rolling here pretty soon because a lot of things need to change.
Yeah, and he was hired, for those interested, as the he's assistant GM now as well, which is something that's interesting, and of course the vice president of baseball operations. So that is his role. We'll see ultimately what happens going forward with Click and how everything works out. But he is highly regarded. So I don't know, a decent. We won't know. We really won't know until we see what kind of moves and how he gets his fingerprints on this team and gets his hands on the organization. But let us know down below your thoughts on this. Lots of news coming, so make sure to hit the subscribe button. We'll see you guys later.